And welcome to another episode of the Tar Heels Insider Podcast right here on the SI Network. My name is Grant Sachere, joined here by Jeremiah Artacho. We are two of the beat writers for North Carolina Tar Heels on SI, bringing you all the latest news in regards to UNC sports. We'll be doing this daily. I'll be going solo Monday through Thursday. Jeremiah will be joining me Friday through Sunday. Of course, we'll talk about all the latest, whether it's UNC football, UNC basketball, UNC baseball, and even some other sports as well. For example, if you women's soccer, we'll talk a little bit of lacrosse. Of course, when there's a big news story there, but of course, mostly we'll focus on football, basketball, and baseball. And then, of course, we'll also talk about the other sports as well. This is a UNC sports show, so it doesn't matter what sport it is. We're going to talk about it, but of course, the main focus will always be football, always be basketball, and of course, we'll always talk about baseball. But for the University of North Carolina Chapel Hill, the one sport that matters the most is basketball, and rightfully so. 21 Final Fours, That's the most of any program in college basketball, 60 national championships, countless of NBA All-Stars, Hall of Famers. Michael Jordan went to North Carolina. All right, so there's the standard right there. Of course, you got Dean Smith, one of the greatest innovators in college basketball history. Roy Williams got his collegiate career started as an assistant under Dean Smith. Of course, he went to Kansas too, but then he came back home and then brought 3 more championships to North Carolina and really cemented that program as a blue blood in college basketball. Of course, Dean Smith, Frank McGuire started it because they won the national championship first in 1957. Dean Smith became one of the greatest innovators and also made North Carolina a national brand. And Roy Williams basically kicked the door down and made sure that it is on top of the food chain, especially in the ACC, because they have before he got there, Duke had won more national championships, right? And then Coach K got the 5. But then Roy Williams got North Carolina to 6, so that matters. But Roy Williams' successor, Hubert Davis, who he did handpick, the first year he got it going. I mean, they won a Cinderella run to the national championship game, which they, by the way, on lieu to that, they beat Duke in Coach K's final home game, and then they beat Coach K in his final game. So that's what made that season very, very memorable for a lot of UNC fans, including like yourself, Jeremiah. I know you grew up a North Carolina fan. And then on top of that, it really has been a mixed bag after that. It really has. I mean, they made the Sweet 16, I believe 2 years ago. But I mean, other than that, it's been a very mixed bag. There's a lot of expectations on Hubert Davis, but really for any coach who is the head man at one of the most prestigious college basketball programs in the country. But why there's so much heat on him is, because one, it's been a mixed bag, but then two, if you look, you got to do is look across town. Duke. They nailed that succession plan. John Shire has been fantastic for their program. He went to the Elite 8 his first year there, and then last year they made the Final Four and really should have made the national championship game. They blew it at the end. But he's done a fantastic job in his first 2 years at Duke and really keeping that thing going. And it's always hard to replace, Coach K, right? That dude is one of the greatest college basketball coaches in history. I mean, when you think college basketball, he's one of the first things that pops up. He's an icon. Whether you hate him or you love him, you got to respect him. Especially, I know, for all the UNC fans watching. And I think UNC fans feel the same way. They don't like him, but they got mad respect for him, and he did a great job succeeding him. But Hubert Davis, he's done a decent job. Of course, he led him to the national championship, but after that hasn't been that great. But I think the big worry too, worry that a lot of UNC fans, I feel like I've only been here for a week, and maybe they are thinking it. I haven't talked to enough UNC fans since I've gotten down here, but I don't think people realize how scary of a move that NC State was able to get Will Wade. And Jeremiah, I know you're a college basketball fanatic, and I think we all know who Will Wade's name is. Of course, when we think of Will Wade, we think of the strong-ass offer quote he had when he's the head coach.
Yeah.
But seeing what he did in person, especially at LSU, I mean, this guy can recruit, but also he's one of the best. He is one of the best program builders in college basketball. And I was actually looking at some when I was doing some information on an article, because I think it should be out. It should be out. The article should be out by the time this podcast gets uploaded. But it's actually already out now. But the one thing that Will Wade has done at every single stop is that not only did he win games, but he won immediately. He goes to Chattanooga. That was his first head coaching job. Before he got there, they were 24-40 the last 2 years, and they went 13-19 the year before we got there. And the 2 years he was in Chattanooga, they went 40-25. They went back-to-back winning seasons. Goes to VCU, where he was an assistant coach under Shaka Smart. VCU had a 51-20. Now, although he didn't really have to build up that program, VCU's program has always been one of the better mid-major programs in college basketball. But he had a 51-20 record with 2 straight NCAA appearances and won a share of the Atlantic 10 regular season title in 2016. But really, his LSU job, I think the job he did at LSU was phenomenal. Regardless of whether you think he broke NCAA rules or whatnot, it doesn't matter. If he had done that in today's game, he would still be the head coach at LSU. But when he went over to LSU, LSU was one of the worst teams in the SEC. They had a 2-16 record in SEC play the year before he got there. His first year there, they have a winning record. They go to the NIT. But then his second year, they won the SEC regular season title. And they beat 2 top 5 teams that season. That was the first time in a long time that had happened. And not only that, he made people in Baton Rouge care about basketball. A lot of times when people mention LSU basketball, especially in Baton Rouge, they just think of it as a holdover sport until because you have football season, then you have basketball season.
Basketball.
So you got to stay entertained somehow. So they focus on basketball. They watch basketball, and then once baseball season happens, that's a wrap. They're focused on baseball because of course LSU's won 8 national championships. They're easily the biggest brand in college baseball right now. Just really since the last 40 years. But he made people get off their butts and go to the PMAC to watch basketball. Of course, Kim Mulkey's been doing a great job of that. People love Kim Mulkey down there because she's from Louisiana. She's not. She grew up in Tencho Parish, which is about an hour from Baton Rouge. She's a homegirl, right? So people are going to support her, and of course they win. They won the national championship. I mean, men's basketball is kind of whatever. But he made people care about LSU basketball before he was ultimately fired, not because of the stuff he did on the court, but because of the NCAA violations that were getting ready to be brought upon LSU. Then the NCAA is like, no, he did nothing wrong. So LSU basically fired him for no reason. Then he goes to McNeese State. And this is really interesting. Dude, McNeese State was one of the worst teams, worst mid-major programs, really one of the worst programs in college basketball in general. I think they were in last place in the Southland the year before we got there. They were one of the worst teams at Southland Conference. He gets hired at McNeese State as basically a rebound job. Basically like, hey, I need to show that I still have it. Mm-hmm. Not only does it show he still has it, they win back-to-back Southland Conference championships. Then they win their first NCAA tournament game. I believe it was 20 or 30 years. And they upset Clemson in the first round. And, of course, he gets hired by NC State. But he is – I don't think people listen. He is one of the best program builders in college basketball. He's a great recruiter. And that's a scary thing to think about because he's going to an NC State program that has a lot of tradition. Yes, they are the third wheel to UNC and Duke, but they have a lot of tradition as well. That is a proud program. They've won 2 national championships. They've been in countless Final Fours. They went to the Final Four 2 years ago. This is a solid basketball program with a lot of tradition. And knowing what he did at LSU, which, by the way, LSU's basketball facilities are terrible. Imagine what he's going to do at NC State, where they actually care about basketball. That's a scary thought, especially when you have the class of 2027 coming in, where you have a lot of guys who are rated highly from the state of North Carolina. So not only does Hubert Davis have to compete with NC State, but he has to compete with Duke, which they've always done. I mean, that's how their rivalry.
It's always going to be a thing. Yeah.
The rivalry got started because of recruiting, right? It happened in the '60s with Art Heyman. A lot of people All the UNC coaches thought Arheim was coming to UNC. He ended up going to Duke. That's how that rivalry got started. It's a very interesting story. That's story for another time. But now you have to worry about what Will Wade's doing at NC State. And that's a scary thought for North Carolina and Hubert Davis.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Will Wade brings a lot. Definitely that game against McNeese against Clemson in the first round of this past NCAA tournament definitely brought eyes to McNeese. Well, besides Amir Khan and his big boombox before the game began, he definitely became a big personality on Twitter in the sport of college basketball for being just a manager. And yeah, Amir Khan is also with Will Wade now. But that's beside the point. But Will Wade definitely has experience. He knows what it takes to win games. He has experience coaching NBA players now that are doing pretty well for themselves. Naz Reid with the Minnesota Timberwolves, and then also Cam Thomas with the Brooklyn Nets, who had done well for himself in a respectful manner. And yeah, Will Wade adds to the mix and makes everything gives more firepower to the ACC, especially within the triangle. You had John Shire first, and then you also have Hubert Davis, and then you now have Will Wade. So it's just the changing of the triangle basketball programs is obviously succeeding. It's going well. It's moving in the right direction, and it's only going to become more competitive.
Yeah, that was something I wanted to write about because Will Wade is a fireball, and I think he is the perfect head coach for NC State. I mean, like I said, basketball was third fiddle to football and baseball, and he made sure that people went to the games. And I think that is somebody that NC State fans are going to rally around. He was known as the bad boy of the SEC. A lot of SEC fans hated Will Wade. The only people that loved Will Wade were LSU fans. Because he would throw fits on the side. He looked like a little kid on the side. He's not afraid to embarrass himself on national TV. That's the type of guy Will Wade is, especially if he truly believes in something. And then on top, his nickname is the American Gangster, right?
Yeah.
Just keep in mind, his nickname is the American Gangster. That's all we need to know about him. He doesn't give a rat hoot what people think about him, and that's perfect for a school like NC State that has always played third fiddle in the triangle. And I think because he's got the little brother nature to him, and that's what NC State has. They have the little brother nature. Like, what about us?
Yeah.
What about us? Because to be fair to them, they've had a lot of success. Yeah, I know they've been up and down, but they've had a lot of success. And really, this is the first time. And I think I may have discussed with you last night, but this is the first time. It may have been you, but somebody. I forgot who it was. But this is the first time, really, since the 1980s, where NC State had a coach that was on similar levels to the coaches at North Carolina and Duke. And that was Jimmy V. Jimmy V was a great coach. I'm not saying he was like, they're winning 30 games a year or whatnot, but NC State was a very competitive team. They would frustrate you, and Will Wade's style is to frustrate you. He wants to frustrate you. He wants to frustrate you on the court. He wants to frustrate you if you're watching on TV. He wants to frustrate the people covering the game. He wants to frustrate the people that are talking about the game after the game. He wants to frustrate you on the recruiting trail. His whole thing is being an agitator, and that's what NC State is. They are, like I said, NC State is the little brother. I'm not being derogatory. I'm just talking about in the nature of how they are treated, and also because of how they're treated, they're seeing that they themselves want to believe that, and they'll make a hoot to show, hey, what about me? What about me? And Will Wade is the perfect coach for that. And I think NC State will be a serious competitor in the ACC. I'm not sure about right away, but in year 2, they will get rocking and rolling. Because Will Wade, like I said, is a hell of a recruiter. And you want to know why I know he's a great recruiter? When he was at LSU, in 4 of the 5 years he was at LSU, they had a top 10 recruiting class. And 2 of those years, they had a top 5 class. Both of them were ranked number 4. And we're talking about that LSU recruiting-wise for basketball. Not football, not baseball, for basketball, competing with Kansas, Kentucky, North Carolina, Duke. They think about all the blue bloods in college basketball right now. LSU is competing with them on the recruiting trail. And a lot of that has to do with Will Wade and how he recruits and how tenacious he is and how aggressive he is. Not only on the court, because he's a player's coach, but how he recruits as well. He was getting guys from the DMV to come to Baton Rouge, okay? And I can tell you this right now. Baton Rouge is not really, I love Baton Rouge. I enjoyed my time in Baton Rouge. But if you're looking from the outside in, you're like, what is this place? And if you look at the facilities for basketball and comparing to football and baseball, it's not even closer. Like, Will Wade complained about the facilities all the time. Like, water was going through the there's water going through the practice facilities, ceilings. There's rats running along the PMAC during games, by the way. Like, the facilities were bad. But people still wanted to come out to support LSU basketball, even with the rats running around the arena. Like, that's the type of coach he is.
Have you seen a rat?
You know, it's funny you say that. I did not see a rat at the games. There were some people that said that I saw a rat at the games. I didn't see one, but I'll tell you this, though. When I was a student at LSU, to make extra money, I was, doing report stuff or whatever. I used to be a student worker at the PMAC. And so after everyone leaves, you got to pick up the courts and stuff like that. And, for certain, because of course you got gymnastics and basketball going on in the same arena. But every single time, like, we would move the bleachers back or something like that, or we'd go across the concourse, you might see like a mouse or two. You may even see
Wow.
But you see that a lot. But you see that in a lot of arenas, right?
Yeah.
But the problem is LSU's arena is so outdated. Like, they're going to build it. They have to build a new arena. They're building a new arena. They're in the process of building a new arena right now. But my point is, like, that arena was outdated. The practice facilities were horrible. Will Wade was complaining about all that. Matter of fact, the only reason why they're building stuff is because Kim Mulkey is making a hoot about it. And when Kim Mulkey's making a hoot about it, everybody else in the St. Louis is going to make a hoot about it. So, I mean, just imagine Will Wade with actual facilities, and that's something that NC State has.
Oh yeah, definitely the infrastructure is there for NC State, so it's going to be interesting. But yeah, I wanted to go back to what you were saying about the little brother persona that Will Wade has. Would you compare it to UConn's Dan Hurley?
Yes. Maybe not as extreme as Dan Hurley,
Okay.
but in that realm. Like, he's not afraid to embarrass himself on TV. He's not, right?
Yeah.
He's also a coach where, like, players want to play for him. I think players want to play for Dan Hurley too, but I say this, like, when Will Wade, and that's commonplace. I know this is commonplace among schools across the country whenever a coach leaves. But the second it was announced that Will Wade was getting fired, like, in 48 hours, there were no more scholarship players left in LSU's roster. Now, that changed after a while. Maybe you had one or two guys come back, but everyone left. Matter of fact, some of the players who are on Will Wade's last LSU team actually went with them to McNeese State. Like Brandon Murray, who's one of the better players from McNeese State. He actually played for Will Wade at LSU. Then he transferred to Georgetown. Then he went to Ole Miss. Then he went back to McNeese. It was kind of a weird deal, but players loved Will Wade. They loved him. He was a player's coach, and I think that's also an aspect that I think also a lot of people don't realize how great of a player's coach he is. Now he's a great recruiter and a great program builder, but he has great relationships with each and every one of his players, which is also very important when you go on the recruiting trail. I mean, this is I know, like, this sounds like, I know a lot of UNC fans are like, oh, this is NC State. We've been there so many times before. They've only won like 4 or 5 games in the last 20 years, but they have never had a coach like Will Wade. Like,
No.
Mark Goffrey was a good coach, but he ain't Will Wade. Like,
Two different
Will
people.
Wade has won at every single place he's been at. And most of those places were places where they were an afterthought. He loves going to the afterthought and making that afterthought relevant, and then you hating that afterthought. Like, oh, this is a little nice story. And then after a while, it's like, nah. You can't do that. I hate you. You can't win there. You can't be at the same level as us. Those are the type of places he loves being at. And NC State is the perfect spot for Will Wade. Perfect spot. Oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah, NC State definitely provides a different level of basketball, of course, being here in North Carolina alongside Duke and UNC. So Will Wade is definitely stepping into a whole new environment, a step above what he's been doing in the past with Chattanooga to VCU, to LSU, and then McNeese last season. So he's definitely gonna get his bang for his buck while he's there coaching on the job. He's gonna be with a lot of different kinds of players, a lot of different kinds of coaching, and then he's gonna obviously be competing in the ACC, arguably known to be one of the best for a long time in college basketball compared to SEC right now, as some others feel like SEC is at the top.
Yeah, they
But
are right now. I mean, the way
yeah,
things are looking. I mean, they've been doing
yeah.
nicely with basketball.
Yeah, they have for sure. Definitely considering Florida's championship this past season. But yeah, Will Wade is stepping into a new world, a new kind of college basketball. It's going to be a different feel for him. It's going to be a brand new game in many different ways.
Yeah, and we talked a lot about Will Wade and NC State. And I think UNC fans want to talk about UNC, but let's talk about Herbert Davis a little bit. Like, what? I mean, do you think that if they have another kind of a weak year and that maybe first round exit, do you think that UNC would move in a different direction? Where do you view Hubert Davis going into this year? I know he's a UNC guy, and I know, the players love him, and I know he's a highly respected person as a part of this community, not only as a player but also as a longtime assistant coach under Roy Williams and now the head coach. But this is kind of a take it or break it, or not make it or break it year for Hubert Davis. I don't think I don't think he's gonna get fired for this year, but if NC State starts rolling, they might move in a different direction because the ACC is only going to get tougher and tougher. You're not going to have a year like last year where, it was kind of top heavy and then, there's a few teams at the top and then everyone else at the bottom. Like, I think this will be a much more competitive year for ACC basketball.
Yeah, so I actually did an article about this whole topic. I titled it Hubert Davis, Deep Run or Bust. So, I mean, he started off in national championship. He was literally had a 15-point lead, 20 minutes away from winning a national championship in his first ever season as a college head coach, which would have been insane. Following that year, completely missed the tournament, even though they were listed as preseason number one. So that was a shock and disappointment to many fans, of course. Following that year, with the addition of Cormac Ryan and Harrison Ingram, and then Elliot Cadeau's first year, who's now the point guard at Michigan this coming fall. They made it to the Sweet 16. They were number one overall as well in their region. They were a number one seed. They did well enough to get that. And then following this past year, losing to Ole Miss, and they even started as an 11 seed playing against San Diego State, which isn't really common to see out of UNC basketball, to be in a number 11 and have a play-in game. So I like to put it in simple terms. The journey of Coach Hubert Davis as North Carolina's basketball coach has been a roller coaster, simply. Well, especially that roller coaster goes up and it goes down and it goes up and then down. So if the pattern follows, if the pattern continues like that, we'll see it up and up year. But if the pattern stays true, then maybe the 2026, 2027 is a down. But obviously there has to be consistency for not just the program, but for the school itself. So it's definitely going to be interesting. And personally, I think he'll still have a couple more years despite the results of this coming campaign. But definitely, of course, want to win games. And obviously, who doesn't want to win a national championship at UNC? So definitely, I wouldn't say there's a lot of pressure. I bet Hubert Davis wouldn't say there's a lot of pressure himself, of course, knowing that what kind of person he is. But there's definitely is a level of expectation for him to do well, especially with the kind of roster that they have.
Yeah.
The roster that they have this season, they actually have a true big man now. They have a 7-footer.
Yeah.
The last 7-footer they had was Roy Williams last season, the COVID year with Walker Kessler, who's now in the NBA,
Oh
doing
my
pretty
God.
well for himself. Yeah, but Henry Vasar.
I'm sorry, I'm getting PTSD. I heard that name. I'm like,
Oh yeah.
I'm getting PTSD.
Oh yeah,
He
yeah.
had
Auburn,
like 7
yeah.
blocks. He had like 7 blocks at LSU. Like, we can, like, anytime we're trying to go into play, block. I'm like, come on.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he was. Yeah,
You can do this at UNC. Why you have to do this at Auburn? You can do like go back to UNC, please. I mean, damn.
yeah, that was. I remember watching that season. That season, his one and only season in Auburn. Following, he did well. He had a lot of flashes when he was in his 1 year in Chapel Hill, but then once he became a full-time starter, he just exploded. And then he went off to the NBA following that year. But then now, a couple of seasons later, you have Henry Vesar, who's a lob threat, who can play on the inside, is a good rim protector, and then he can also shoot a little bit from the outside, particularly three pointers in the corner. But the rest of his game is left to be seen, so that'll be interesting for UNC fans to see. So, yeah, it's just a whole new roster, and then especially it'll be Seth Trimble's last year in Chapel Hill as a senior. So it's going to be very interesting. Definitely a lot to stay tuned about with Hubert Davis and how the season rolls on. But definitely there are a lot of eyes and a lot of people watching, staying close to how the team's going. So there's a lot of expectations.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you mentioned Henry Vesar. I mean, the guy was, he didn't start a lot of games for
No.
Arizona, but he played a lot of games. He was
Yeah, he
basically,
played a lot. No, he was not. He was not a starter, so
yeah,
it
I
was
mean,
interesting.
and even though he never started, he averaged 9.4 points per game with 5 rebounds and 1.1 blocks. That's per game. But then his numbers improved in Big 12, which, by the way, the Big 12 is a great conference for basketball. And Big 12 play averaged 11 points per game, 11 points, 5.4 rebounds, and 1.5 blocks per game. I mean, he's not only a solid guy in the interior with shooting high percentage shots on the inside, of course, playing good defense. But like you said, he's also a volume shooter from the three. And then also you got to include Caleb Wilson. And I'm shocked you didn't say Caleb. Maybe you just mentioned
No,
Caleb Wilson.
not yet. Of
Maybe you
course,
mentioned
that's a
Caleb Wilson.
gimme.
I mean, every time I listen to a podcast, every time I read something, I mean, it's like this guy is one of the best prospects UNC's ever had.
Yeah, I want to go a different
That's
direction.
saying a lot because there's been a lot of great prospects that UNC's had. I mean,
Yeah,
I
no,
can
they.
add the list, but I mean,
Yeah,
if Caleb Wilson and Henry Buzar can live up to their potential, this UNC team is back to where it once was. Like every time UNC won a national championship, it was largely because they had a great front court, right? You got to think about in '05. Yes, Raymond Felton.
Oh, yeah.
And Raymond Felton and Rashawn McCants did their thing, but Sean May and Marvin Williams coming off the bench. I mean, that also made especially Sean May, because down the stretch of that year, I mean, that dude was unstoppable. And then you go back, then you go to '09, Tyler Hansbrough on the inside. They could not stop Tyler. Tyler Hansbrough is the greatest player to ever wear a UNC uniform. I'm talking about in terms of his collegiate career, because of course I know we had Michael Jordan, James Worthy, and Vince Carter, and
tons of names, tons of
I mean,
names.
there's a lot of names that you can mention. A lot of great players in UNC history that have gone and had great NBA careers. But in terms of a accomplished college career, it was Tyler Hansbrough. Then you go to the 2017 year, and Kenny Meeks was a solid. Kenny Meeks was a solid big man. But
Yeah.
if you look at them, I mean, even going to the 1982 national championship team, James Worthy and Sam Perkins and Matt Doherty, they had a loaded front court. I know a lot of people talk about Michael Jordan and the front court. The front court was solid too, but really their backcourt. I mean, they had a loaded backcourt. I mean, anytime you see a great UNC team, I mean, even the 90s, Antoine Jameson and Rasheed Wallace. Like, look at some of those great UNC teams. They had strong backcourts, and that's something they've been missing. And I'm glad you mentioned Walker Kessler. Walker Kessler was greatly underused during his time. During his time at UNC. I mean, that was with Roy Williams, and like the fact that he went to Auburn and did his thing. I mean, luckily UNC still had they had Armando Bacot.
Yeah, they had Armando Bacot, yeah, and then Armando Bacot became Armando Bacot. So yeah.
But they haven't had a guy like that. Besides Armando Bacot, they never had. You have to have 2 or 3 guys that are like Armando Bacot. UNC has not had that, and they might finally have that this year. And also, that's not including also not including Jaron Williams.
Yeah, Jaron Stevenson from Alabama.
Jaron Stevenson.
Yeah. So Yeah, the way I look at it, going back to UNC's last championship under Roy Williams in 2017, following that shocking buzzer beater when they lost to Villanova and Chris Jenkins. Yeah, the formula for winning national champions has always followed suit. So you had Kennedy Meeks, you had Isaiah Hicks, and then you had freshman Tony Bradley, who was
Yeah,
just a
Tony
part of
Bradley's
the
awesome too.
Tony Bradley was just a part of the Indiana Pacers this past NBA Finals. So, yeah, he turned out pretty well for himself too. Became a pretty solid rotation piece for the Pacers. And then now, looking at this coming season, in Hubert Davis's fifth year, you have Henry Vasar, then you have Caleb Wilson, and then you have Jaren Stevenson. So that trio right there, and then that's not to mention Zayden High and James Brown. So those are five guys, five players in the front court who are capable of producing, grabbing rebounds is number one. That's always been the motto for UNC, dating back to Dean Smith, of course. So just it's not the same like back to the basket bigs kind of big man that UNC has typically had, but it's more of the modern kind of big man, like with the shooting threes, like they're more mobile. Like if you watch clips of Caleb Wilson, he plays like to play off the block. He can dribble similarly to a guard, so it's a whole different kind of play style. But it's definitely interesting and aligns more to Hubert Davis's coaching style for sure.
Yeah, man, and just this team has a lot of expectations. They have a lot of talent. I think this team has a chance to be special, but with those expectations, and really those were brought upon Hubert Davis himself because his first year they go to the national championship game. They nearly won it, right?
Yeah.
So he created that through his own success his first year. Now it's been a roller coaster, but I think this is the time to right the ship. I think UNC basketball has finally caught up with the times. Of course, we talked in the last podcast, about UNC finally having a GM and his new contract and everything. UNC is moving along with the times, and not only that, and I would say this too. I really like the addition of Luka Bakovac.
Yep.
I
Yeah, I
really
do too.
because he's different. Like you said, he's different from most freshmen because he's 21 years old. But not only that, he's played professionally. He's played against grown men. So when he
Oh
comes
yeah.
to America, he's already fully developed. Because Europeans, they develop different. Like they develop from like they're teenagers. They often go up against adults. But he's also played in some crazy environments that are even crazier than the ones here in America.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, European basketball is definitely one of a kind. I mean, he averaged 14.9 points last season playing over there. So, and to just if he can translate even just like a little bit of that or maybe 14.9 points in this coming season or maybe just average double digits would already be beneficial and help the team in a lot of ways. Especially his shot making ability. I feel like he's the kind of guy that if Hubert Davis needs to run a play and needs to get a bucket on this next possession with time running down, I feel like Luka Bogovac is that guy that you'd run a play for. Like maybe he can come off a screen, maybe that he gets like a catch and shoot opportunity. He would be that guy in my eyes.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, he's a catch shoot guy, but he also has a chance to create his own shot. Not only
Yeah.
create his own shots, but also create opportunities for other people as well. And then, I think, you gotta have a great backcourt. You're gonna have a great front court, and of course, you'll be able to see that in full swing because they'll have to go up against BYU in that preseason game. And I really like the fact that
That's going to be interesting. Caleb Wilson versus AJ DeBansta. Those are two lottery picks going up against each other. So it's gonna be that's a great exhibition. That's well done by UNC. So yeah,
He
it's gonna
paid
be
$500,000 for that game, and I think that's
Mhm.
huge going the season because that non-conference schedule is rough, and I think we'll talk about that, next
Oh yeah.
week. Because we're 34 minutes in this podcast, but I mean, you got Michigan State, you got Kansas, you got
Yep.
Kentucky, and Ohio State. All your knock. And I know Ohio State isn't as great as it used to be, but still playing four programs that have had a lot of success in the last 25 years in your non-conference schedule is tough for any program. I mean,
Oh yeah.
Ohio State, Michigan State, Kansas, and Kentucky. I mean, you have to win three of those four.
Oh yeah.
You
For
have
sure.
you have to go for a strong start because that's three. I mean, if you win three of those four, that's great. That's a great way to
Yeah,
end the season. You
those are
give yourself
solid.
enough
Yeah,
time.
solid Q1 wins.
And you also you want to go into ACC play with the least amount of losses possible. If you go undefeated, that's great. But you need to go. If you go undefeated in non-conference play, that's great. But you have to limit your losses going to SEC play because the ACC is a dog-eat-dog conference in basketball, and
Oh
it
yeah.
always has been. It always has
Oh
been.
yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, once ACC play rolls around, I mean, it gets pretty crazy, and definitely the non-conference schedule that UNC has this coming fall is setting them up to play against really good competition. So it's going to build them for that, of course. But these opportunities, especially the Kansas game at home, that second game of the season, it's going to be big. There's going to be a lot of buzz around that game, especially following last season's matchup where they came back by so many points. They were down by a ton going into halftime, and yeah, they almost won it. They were leading within the final minutes of that game, so they were about to win it. So that would have been a good win for them and their resume. And yeah, definitely see Hubert Davis and his new squad trying to get revenge.
Yeah, man. I think this would be a very exciting time for UNC basketball. Hopefully, it goes the right way for the Tar Heels because we all know, how tough it is to win games. Not only just basketball, but in any sport. Of course, as I mentioned, they opened up the season with a preseason game against BYU at the Delta Center in Salt Lake City, which should be a great atmosphere even for an exposition game. And of course, you got the Winston-Salem State
Yep.
preseason game on October 29th, and then everything gets officially kicked off
Yeah,
on
November
Monday,
3rd.
November 3rd versus Central Arkansas, and then that same week on Friday, you will welcome in the Kansas Jayhawks into the Dean Dome on
Yeah,
Friday, November 7th. So,
that's gonna be
long way to
interesting. Yep.
go, but it's
Yeah. Yeah, I bet a lot of fans are gonna try and find Roy Williams, so it's gonna be interesting.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's all because he's had a great impact on both programs too, and
Hmm.
also to see really it's also the rematch of that national championship game, the 2022 national championship game.
Oh yeah, and national championship. Yeah.
Yeah. So two.
Yeah. So yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say Candace is on a 2-game winning streak against UNC. So
Yeah,
yeah.
that's also true. You don't want to make it three straight, but a lot of commonalities between the two programs. Of course, Dean Smith is from Kansas, played
Yep.
for Kansas, and then became the head coach at North Carolina. Roy Williams, of course, played and became assistant coach at UNC, then became the head coach at Kansas, and then left Kansas to become the head coach at UNC. So a lot of commonalities between the two programs. Of course, they're both blue bloods. They both played against each other in countless Final Fours and whatnot. A lot of classic matchups. But with that being said, that's going to wrap it up for the Tar Heel Insider Podcast right
Oh
here
yeah.
on the SI Network. I'm your host, Grant Sastre, joined here by Jeremiah Tacho, who is also the associate beat writer right here on North Carolina Tar Heels on SI. Make sure to follow us on Twitter, Sastre Grant for me, last name, first name, Jeremiah, first name, last name. Of course, also make sure to follow Tar Heels on SI on Twitter
Oh yeah.
and Facebook. We're going to be releasing a lot of content in the coming days. Of course, I'm releasing 8 articles a day. Jeremiah's doing the same. Jeremiah's doing about 4 to 6. It doesn't matter. We're doing a lot
Yeah.
of content, so I mean it's very busy, but we love doing what we do. We love covering one of the best athletic programs in the country, and I hope you guys enjoy our content because we're going to be releasing it every day. It's
Oh
just
yeah.
for free. By the way, it's very important for free.
Yep.
So you
For
don't have to
free.
worry about
For
paying a
free.
subscription. A lot of places you have to pay a subscription.
No
But
subscription.
Here on
We're
SI, you
free
do
here.
not
We're
have
free.
to.
We'll
Sir.
save you some money.
Sir, but with that being said, Grant Sastre, Jeremiah Tacho, we'll see you guys later.